fellowship program by Terry and Jetpack. And under that fellowship program, we have started this project called Directing Discourse. So we started this heritage walk. We initiated this thing because we wanted inclusion of mainly the Delhi general crowd. We have been focusing on NGO school students as well as the normal school students with us. We want them to be a part of the heritage. So the entire project talks about inclusion of different groups of society to know about the heritage and also talk about the conservation of heritage through individual efforts. So this is one of the individual efforts where everybody comes along and we are trying to discuss about the heritage, the monuments, and at the same time I'm sure we all realize what damages are happening to the heritage and the monuments. So this is one of the individual efforts I would like to highlight here. I would like to also introduce my team members, Yugal and Harika. We three are working for this project called Directing Discourse. And in association with Delhi Karwa, we are organizing, and Delhi Karwa is going to take up this work primarily. How we came to know about this Delhi Karwa organization was through a conference by Delhi itself. So Delhi Karwa, Mr. Asif Khan came. Asif Khan Delhi. He's not with us today because he was engaged in some other program. But his team representatives are with us. Asif Khan, Mr. Asif Khan, who's going to lead the walk. And so the entire concept is quite nice and engaging. So I assure you the experience will be amazing to all of us here. And I would just pass it on to Mr. Asif Khan.
So, very briefly about Mehrauli Archaeological Park. Right now, the campus we are standing in is around 200 acres. And what makes this park the most amazing site in Delhi history is it is the oldest, ये सबसे पुराना बसेरा है दिल्ली में. It is the oldest place settlement, and it is still alive today. There is a whole Mehrauli village which is gradually gaining shades of urbanism now, and thank you. And it is still alive. This park has got more than 100 monuments, and some of them are still undiscovered. You've got pieces and all. In 1997, the government actually decided to, start restoring this park. It was a joint collaborative effort from a lot of organizations. Primarily, Delhi Tourism and Transport Development Corporation. Most of the restoration work has been done by Intact in 2000, and whatever this landscaping, whatever we see today is a result of that. But there are still a lot of monuments. You'll just probably find bits and pieces. They're still secluded inside the shrubs and all. And probably if they dug up this place, you'll see a lot of those monuments come. Not all of them are in perfect condition, and there's a lot of history spread out here. Starting from the oldest city in Delhi, which we call this as Kila Lal Kot. That was the first city in Delhi, which was established by the Tomar dynasty in 1060 AD, and then all the way till the present day. So we will go, the first site we'll go to is Balban Stone. We'll talk about Delhi before the Arab invasion and the Mughals and the Sultanate period, and we'll take a look at the Balban Stone, and I have a few things to share there, okay?
So the reason we are here today is because this structure that you see inside is one of the most important structures in Delhi history. Though it is not, it's not looking very beautiful like my home. ये सुल्तान बलबन का tomb है. Balban was one of the kings of rulers of the slave dynasty. So before I go into slave dynasty and all that, why this structure is so important? One is because during his time, Balban was a very powerful ruler. Or this is the monument where you see the first, in terms of architecture, you see the perfect true arch, the first true arch in any Delhi monument. Now, आप ये पूछेंगे कि what is a true arch? So let me show you the arch on top. So if you take a look at that, you can see there's a triangular stone in between. That is called a keystone. Okay. The function of the keystone is that it will actually balance the weight of the arch and what we call as the tensile stress. Okay. In physics, you'd call it as tensile stress. It does a very good job of spreading tensile strength on both sides equally, so that the weight of the structure is not in the center. So compared to, if you go to Qutub Minar, you've seen the arches of the Quwwat al-Islam Mosque. They're pretty huge in size. Okay. Now, if you ask me what is the difference between this and that, they don't have a keystone in between. What they've got is stones which are, positioned one on top of the other. But they've just started, pushing the upper stone a little ahead of the stone below. Now the disadvantage of that is it doesn't give very good strength to the entire structure, and the advantage of a true arch is you can actually, expand the scale. You can actually make it taller, or you can make it wider, and you can still retain the structure. Because what will happen is if you suppose you've got an arch like this. So this is just a rough diagram. So what's happening is यहाँ पर जो portion है, whatever it is, concrete, stones or whatever, all this force actually comes down due to gravity. Now when you put a keystone and you actually design it as a true arch, the force is spread in these two directions. Okay. So this is the gravitational force for the stones or whatever, concrete, whatever is here. It is spread in both of these directions. It's called tensile stress. So, ये जो है, the true arch does a very good job of that. So you can actually make a arch tall. You can actually widen the columns so that you can get an arch. If you don't have a true arch, you will reach a position when you start spreading out the pillar. You reach a position when the structure will collapse. So this is the monument where you actually see the first true arch in Delhi. Arch is a very important feature of Islamic and Mughal architecture. So that's the reason this is a very important monument. So politically reason, Balban was actually a very strong and powerful ruler. So we'll talk about the Arab invasion, but उसके पहले मैं आपसे ये पूछूंगा कि आपको क्या लगता है before the Arabs and even before the Tomars, I mentioned Tomars were the first settlers here. 1060. इसके पहले दिल्ली में क्या था? Anybody have any guesses?
Really like a village.
Huh?
Really like a village.
But who used to stay here? Any अच्छा ठीक है, I got it. That's fine. इसके पहले who used to stay here? So let's go to Hindu mythology. Mahabharata. Indraprastha का नाम तो आपने सुना होगा, right? Indraprastha was a place where the Pandavas. Now mythology is still mythology. It's not concrete history. We don't have core evidence. So going by mythology, we can say Indraprastha was the forerunner city, and I believe they say it was somewhere located near the Purana Killa. However, because we do not have any concrete evidence to say that it actually existed, वहाँ पर they've started digging at one point in time, and they found some black utensils, pottery and stuff like that, which is from another era. Now, it is said that between somewhere between 700 to 300 BC, there existed certain settlements here, but that settlement did not continue forever. Now, I don't know what the reason is that the settlement did not continue. There could have been a number of reasons. But in the later invasions, for example, when the the Arabs started invading here, then the Mahmud Ghazni invaded India 17 or 18 times. He plundered. His focus was only towards Mathura and all the temples there where there was a lot of wealth accumulated. Nowhere there is a mention of Delhi, though it falls in the path. Okay. Again, Alexander, when he came to India, of course he didn't come all the way till Delhi. He had to stop near the river Beas. But there is some scriptures, some documents written by Megasthenes. They also do not mention about Delhi.
This Taxila, I think, no? Taxila.
Taxila was a university.
Sorry. King Porus was.
Porus. So, उस समय भी there is no mention of Delhi. So, it's very strange that if Delhi would have been such an important city, there is no mention of it at all. But it is believed that there was some kind of a civilization here much earlier. But who they were, we really have no idea. I think that was much before. So, when you read about Delhi history or when you go to Heritage Walk or anything like that, or anybody tells you what Delhi Heritage, the first thing they tell you about is the 7 cities of Delhi. So Delhi is a city of cities, and constantly as the rulers changed, they started making different cities in different places. So Mehrauli is the site where in 1060 AD, the Tomars were the first people to establish their empire. In fact, it was not just here, it was spread across. After that, the Chauhans built Kila Rai Pithoda. So we are traveling towards the Saket metro station. You see a wall on the right side. That is Kila Rai Pithoda. उसमें भी कुछ नहीं बचा है. We just got walls and we don't have like very distinct structures. And after that, following the invasion of Turks, we started seeing more settlements here. So we had the Shiri Fort, where you go to Shahpur Jat and the Shiri Fort area. वहाँ पर भी there was a settlement before. Again, nothing much is left there. Again, only walls.
It was Khilji's settlement.
Yeah, it was Khilji's. It was established somewhere in 1300. And then we had Tughlaqabad in 1326, which is again on this Mehrauli Badarpur road. And then Firozabad in 1354. And finally, between 1354 and 1534, when they built Purana Killa, there was a huge gap. Okay. And then finally, we had Shah Jahanabad, which what we know as the Red Fort and the area surrounding it, which is from 7th century. So every time there were a new sect of rulers, they have established this. Now what's different about each of these is, as early as 626 BC, the Arabs first started trying to invade India. But at that point of time, they failed many times, of course. And उसके बाद, we had Mahmud Ghazni and Muhammad Ghori who tried to come and they essentially they plundered. Their intention was not to actually become rulers of this. Ghazni especially plundered this India 17 times. Then Muhammad Ghori, who actually came, he left back one of his generals, Qutbuddin Aibak, here. And after Muhammad Ghori's death, he had a vast empire. It spread all the way from Afghanistan and spread over to India, even to Bengal. So after Muhammad Ghori's death, there was no one single emperor who could, actually reclaim his throne. So all his generals declared themselves as independent rulers. So we had Qutbuddin Aibak from Delhi. We had somebody called Tajuddin Yodiz, who was from somewhere near the Ghazni area in Afghanistan. And there was one more person in Bengal. So all of them basically declared themselves independent rulers. So there was a power struggle. So that was the first time the That was the starting of the Sultanate period, 1206, when actually people started ruling India. So there are essentially 5 dynasties which ruled during the Sultanate period. First one is the slave dynasty, and then after that we have the Khiljis, then we had the Tughlaqs, then we had the Saids, and then the Lodhis. So the period from 1206 to 1526. 1526 is when Babur invaded India.
Battle of Panipat.
So that was the period where we had Sultanate. Now, one interesting fact about Delhi, this place, Mehrauli, is during all these periods, I spoke about the 7 cities in Delhi. Throughout this period, people kept constructing or adding monuments here. So I've got a list I'll just read out. It's a slightly long list, but just for your information. So during the period of Khiljis, they've added, if you've been to the Qutub complex, they've added the Alai Darwaza, they've added Alai Minar, they've added Alauddin Madrasa, 2 floors of Qutub Minar were added, and there's a Chaumukha Darwaza which is here on the Sayyid Mecca fort, that was repaired. So that was their contribution to the architecture. Uske baad, during the Purana Kila period, that is the early Mughal period, we had the Raju Ki Bawali, which we are going to see now, Jamali Kamali Mosque and grave, Tomb of Imam Zamin, Tomb of Quli Khan, and Tomb of Adil Khan. Again, all of this is focused in the Mehrauli region. In the later part, after Shah Jahan, again we had some contributions. The Zafar Mahal, which is basically a summer residence for Bahadur Shah Zafar. That was constructed. Actually, Bahadur Shah did not construct it; he just repaired it and gave it to Zafar. And then, when the British were ruling India, this is a period before Islam happened, before 1847. Metcalfe, Thomas Metcalfe, was the resident for the East India Company. He did a few architectural changes. We talked about this when visiting. So, as you can see, that is why Mehrauli is considered as the most treasured place for the historians in the architecture level. In this one single site of 2 acres, there are like close to 100 monuments, and that's a remarkable number. It's just a tragedy that we have not been able to conserve. But had they all been conserved, your walk would have been very different. So this is about Balban. Any questions you have, I'm trying to address this question. Otherwise, we make a mistake. And this stone here, I want to talk about. This is Muhammad Khan, who was Balban's son. It is believed that he died. So one of the problems with the early Sultanate period was they had this twofold issues. One is they had to protect themselves from the Mongols, who were always trying to invade. The second thing is they were also trying to establish themselves here in India. So they were constantly in inner struggles for power. So Muhammad Khan died when he joined while fighting. And it is believed due to his grief, Balban also died. So Balban is typically the most powerful ruler between Iltutmish and Alauddin Khilji. During the early Sultanate period, when we have the Mamluks of the slave dynasty, between 1206 to 1287, when Balban actually died, there were almost like around 9 different rulers in a span of 81 years. That was because of a huge political instability. So there was a group of around 40 noblemen, like ministers, and they would, they had a lot of power and they would keep changing rulers. So one ruler kept assassinating or killing the other one. Or फिर दूसरा वाला used to come into power. Again, he was a puppet in most cases. So Balban was able to break that thing. He himself was one of those 14 who established Nasiruddin Mahmud in power. And for 20 years, though Nasiruddin Mahmud was the crown ruler, this guy was the most influential guy and ran the kingdom. But after Nasiruddin Mahmud's death, he took over from 1266 to 1287. And the way he was successful is he was able to break, those the cumulative, जो इनका जो strength था 40 ministers and others, he was able to break that. And he also established a huge espionage system. That is, he had a lot of spies going there. So somebody would spy about the other person. So people would live in fear, and always you would find out if somebody is doing wrong. So that is why he was successful. He ruled for almost 21 years. Any questions? Or we can go to the next one.
There is one observation I have. These walls probably were plastered beautifully. And some part of that plaster is remaining on that surface. You see calligraphy and some designs done on that wall.
So most of the monuments that you see in Delhi, unfortunately they have this outlook. But during those times they were built, they had a lot of inlay work, beautiful geometric work. So a little bit of that is just left over. But in those days, that would have been painted, in different colors. If you look at the Mediterranean monuments, basically Persia, Uzbekistan, Greece, they use a lot of blue, green, that kind of thing. And the other thing is, Islam does not. Islam forbids, worship of figures or human statues. So that's the reason you see a lot of the Islamic architecture and designs are focused on floral, themes. You see the So that's one reason why you see this kind of thing. And then you'd have the inscription. So a very little bit of this is left. You can see a little bit of blue tile work in between that also.
That is why calligraphy is flourished during Islamic period. This is one reason.
So one more interesting fact my friend tells me here is Amir Khusro. We all know Amir Khusro, right?
Yeah.
So he was a saint and he was the perfect disciple for Hazrat Nizamuddin. So what I've been told right now is when Mahmud Khan died, so Amir Khusro was also, he had two hats basically. He was a Sufi disciple. At the same time, he was also a courtier in the king, with the king's court. So I believe he read out the news that Mahmud Khan died. I think after that was when Balban inspired.
That description is also very poetic. Balban, the ruler, was so moved by his description that probably he had some nervous breakdown, and he fell ill after that.
In some ways, I would like to describe Amir Khusro as the Da Vinci of India. Leonardo da Vinci, is a man who has a lot of profession. I think Amir Khusro, you can't really, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but Amir Khusro was a man with many talents. I think his poetry, music, his innovation of sitar, some musical instruments, and that is phenomenal.
Even the tabla person.
Yeah, even the tabla.
Visible till past 3 to 4 years. First, the first layer was dug and they found certain things. Then they realized that there is something more. Then they dug further and they found that sarai kind of rooms. Those are rooms probably. बाद में आगे आके देख लीजिएगा. Proper rooms over there. So and that tree I just mentioned because you can actually see the layers of digging that happened one by one, like year by year.
Earlier the soil would have been all the way up. Where you can find now.
And this clearing was like, this was a path from here and यहाँ पे पूरा vegetation till last year. So if like I photographed it 3 years back, ये बिल्कुल नहीं था. You won't see those rooms. within last year this has been cleared and found.
Are they going to continue to dig further?
This is a very rich area, but depends. Like एक level के बाद this becomes weak. So ये खोदेंगे तो ये गिर जाएगा. You have to decide that how much to go. जैसे अभी old fort has been dug further and they found Ashokan remains over there. Even of that area. That is still not open for public.
So is this area basically plundered or degraded over time?
This has been a very continuously inhabited area, right? So एक civilization खत्म हो, civilization नहीं मतलब एक settlement गया दूसरा आया तो एक तरह से अच्छी चीज़ है कि this was naturally rich. Like अभी भी जो है there used to be lot of water bodies and lots of good reasons for people to stay here. तो जो जिंदा लोग हैं उनके लिए तो अच्छी चीज़ है, जो गुजर गए हैं उनके लिए बुरी चीज़ है कि उनके ऊपर लेयर बाय लेयर आती जा रही है. So it is a like good problem to have. That people came here and ruined everything because this place was so livable. Like you can live here, sustain your life here.
Was there a water body right next to this?
Yes, there was a water body. अभी भी उसका हौज़ शमसी बचा हुआ है. होली के जो जहाज महल है. But this area was like it had natural reasons. तभी इसको सबने कैपिटल बनाया.
ये जो मॉन्यूमेंट है इसका नाम है इट इज पॉपुलरली नोन एज जमाली कमाली की मॉस्क एंड देयर इज एन एडजॉइनिंग courtyard here where it has the grave of Jamali. So who was Jamali? Jamali was basically a name given to that person. His actual name was Sheikh Fazlullah. He was a poet and he was also Sufi, and he was there. He was in the court of Ibrahim Lodi, who happened to be the last of the Lodi rulers. So after Ibrahim Lodi, 1526, the power went over to the Mughals. Babur came and captured it. And Sheikh Fazlullah also happened to be in the court of Babur and Humayun. Okay. So he was a very good poet, and Ibrahim Lodi also happened to be a good poet. But still, he was actually a disciple of Sheikh Fazlullah for his poetry. So he used to write verses and give it to Sheikh Fazlullah for his approval and review. Now apparently, because he was in the court of three kings, he was blessed with quite a lot of money, and he made this mosque here. And he also happened to make his own grave, which is inside that enclosure. That is closed. We cannot go actually. Earlier it used to be open, and so this place would have been constructed after 1526, 1528 period, somewhere in the 1530s. What's most interesting about this monument is this is a demonstration of the Indo-Islamic architecture. When I say Indo-Islamic, basically Indo-Islamic is patterns from Islam and the Indian local patterns as well. So if you look at this arch here, the first thing is that small window, like a balcony. That is a jharoka, and you probably see it in probably every Western monument. If you go to Rajasthan, modern regions, so that's a concept from there. If you look at the inlay of the arch, you see lotus flowers. Now, lotus is not something Hindu motif. Yeah, it's a Hindu motif. It's not something Islamic. And you probably wouldn't find it if you go towards Persia and all that. Again, lotus here, both sides of the arches. more than top. Even in Humayun's tomb, it has been used. A lotus. And here you have a sun here. In Humayun's tomb, you've got a 6-sided star. Again, I don't know why sun has been used here in this monument. But in Humayun's tomb, the reason star has been used is because Humayun used to rely upon, you know, the क्या कहते हैं वो जो forecast करते हैं ना, astrology. Exactly. And so 6 is a good number for.
Right.
So that's the reason that star exists.
They were astrological reasons for which.
So Humayun was, relied heavily upon astrology. Now here I don't know why the sun is there, but the lotus patterns and all have been derived from India. So this is a combination and confluence of different cultures that we see here. Red sandstone, again, it has been heavily used because it's been found in large quantities in surrounding areas. और geographically मैंने ये भी पढ़ा है, you know the concept of tectonic plates. The earth has got tectonic plates and they keep moving and shifting.
Which causes earthquakes.
Yeah, which causes. So Delhi is in a seismic region. So it is said that places which have got heavy seismic activity or they've got tectonic plates, वहाँ पर red sandstone is found abundantly. So that could be one of the reasons why red sandstone is so abundantly available. We'll just move inside and we'll take a look at the monument. Then we'll go there. We'll take a peek from here, and I'll tell you a few things about that monument. Of Jamali or Sheikh Fazlullah. And why we call this whole thing is Jamali Kamali Mosque, Jamali Kamali Tomb, because there's another person nicknamed Kamali who's also buried along with him. Now nobody actually factually knows who Kamali is. Kamali is a call name basically. Kamali बहुत लोग believe करते हैं कि उनका कोई एक खिदमतगार होगा. Somebody who's like an assistant or maybe his disciple who was very close to him. Some people will believe it was his brother, who is not very known. This person was famous, but he was not famous. There are different versions. One of the versions I read, it also said that Kamali could have been a woman, but nobody would have named a woman Kamali. But it's rhyming, Jamali Kamali. The good part of about this tomb here is that, if you see the tomb from here, you can see some of the tile work that is there. इसके अंदर जो टोम है, 2 टोम्स हैं, जमाली एंड कमाली, उसके अंदर जो डोम है उसमें मोस्ट ऑफ द वर्क इज स्टिल प्रिजर्व्ड द वे इट इज, द आर्टिस्टिक paintings and stuff like that, and luckily it has been preserved, and it is a great marvel for anybody who can take a look at it. Unfortunately today we are not allowed to go inside because the structure is officially closed, or guard I think does not have the keys for this one.
The tombs are inside the structure.
Yeah, inside this.
And there are 2 tombs.
There are many tombs here
side by
also,
side, but they
in
are
this courtyard.
of lesser people.
Yeah, they are probably relatives of close individuals. A very unique concept about a lot of tombs for the kings is. It's just like this. Today, if you've got money, you can buy. Thank you so much. You can buy a piece of land and you can build something for yourself. उन दिनों भी यही होता था कि if you got access to well, you could make a you could reserve your spot for your burial and stuff like that. So if you look at most of the tombs, they are in the vicinity of Sufi saints. Humayun, in the vicinity of Hazrat Nizamuddin, and probably there are 150 graves in Humayun's tomb. Similarly, Jamali also happened to be a Sufi, and some important people may not be princes or of that level, but some a little lesser important would have been buried in this area. Same thing, Bahadur Jah, Zafar's family was supposed. I mean, a lot of his family members are buried in Zafar Mahal, which is just beside Kutubuddin Bakhtiar Qaji's dargah. There is a dargah here.
Dargah, yes.
Okay. Similarly, the Nawab of Loharu has also a piece of land which is close to the dargah. So it is considered more, divine to be buried near a Sufi saint. Auspicious and divine. Because that's what the end goal is. After you die, you're more closer to God or you're more closer to something. You just come front one by one and have a peek. I'm sorry we don't have access inside. But there is a video on Aditya's channel where he has shot the entire ceiling inside. Okay. You can take a look at that, and it's got the designs and all. That is also seen there. Please come forward. There are two names in the structure. One is Quli Khan, the other one is Dilkash. So Quli Khan was Akbar's foster brother. So we had this concept of women feeding princes, not their actual mothers. They were called wet nurses, or they would be given a status of mothers. So Mahamala, if somebody was watching this Akbar wala serial, you would have seen Mahamala's character. So Quli Khan was Mahamud's son. Not Adam Khan, the wicked one, the other one. Okay. Adam Khan's tomb is in Mehroli, a little ahead, where you have got the bus stop. In fact, it is believed even Mahamud was buried there. So here was a grave. I mean, the grave is inside. There was a cenotaph. Now what happened in 1830 is Thomas Metcalfe. So before 1857 is when we had the revolution, first war of India. So what happened is East India Company used to control the empire here in India. The Mughal king, like for example Bahadur Shah Zafar, was given a pension by the East India Company. There used to be a person called the resident who used to actually dictate certain terms and conditions to the king. So Thomas Metcalfe was in that position, and he built a house further up the Red Fort, which is called the Metcalfe House. It had a unique collection of books, art material, etc. I think there are close to around 2,000 books and some artifacts from Napoleon's period. It was a very good library. And then, apart from that, that was a residence close to Red Fort, where he would travel and communicate and do his daily business. Apart from that, he tried to mirror the Mughals in some way. Because Bahadur Shah Zafar, I told you, had a palace, small summer house behind the dargah of Kutubuddin Bakhtiar Qaji. So he took this whole land here, along with the campus here, and he made a summer house called Dilkash. Dilkash is basically something which delights your heart. And ये जो structure है, इसमें उन्होंने, if you see those iron structures, वहाँ पर एक पंखा होता है. So there will be an basically dangling the fan. यहाँ पर एक ये होता था, billiards table was there. And then you see the adjoining walls, some of them are here. There is one construction and they're built rooms here. Apart from this, they also had a small lodge, a little ahead, you go there also. Where it was, they have a small swimming pool, basically what we call it was a honeymoon cottage type also. So they used to stay here, they had landscaped the gardens, in a little somewhat like a British fashion. They had water channels flowing. If you observe when you're walking up the stairs, the steep ones, there was a water channel flowing there. And so they have basically landscaped this region in that fashion. And they used to stay here. There was also a boat house. There was a small gate-like structure opposite the stairs. And if you see, there was a shallow region there. There used to be a lake there. They had a boat house there. And on the top of the roof of the boat house, they used to have lots of birds. It's a very enticing kind of place. Born out of confluence of British and so, and if you see, a lot of the Indian work is preserved, thankfully, and most of it is gone, but you can still see a little bit of this still. Again, this monument also has been restored. The plaster that you see here has been done by intact. Otherwise, you will find such smooth walls. So we will go there next to the honeymoon cottage. And then you can see there is another monument here. And if you see those walls outside, they were constructed later. These are additions by Metta. And they also have a fireplace here. And basically this was converted into a small residence for Metta. Not for Metta, but it was let out to people who like to come and stay here. It was called especially for honeymoon couples. There is an attached swimming pool that was constructed here. Okay. That pit is actually a swimming pool. This was built in 1830. Thomas Pitt. He was a resident. He built. This is the original structure. Surrounding is and the original structure was older. It was much older. I don't know what it is. So since everybody is there, I'll just cover the short bit on Rajon Ki Baoli very quick. So this was constructed, Baoli as you know is a stepwell. So we were talking about water on the way, and I thought I would tell you something about water. So, for any capital city to be established, you've got to have good source of water, especially in the olden days when you don't have pumps and water irrigation systems and stuff like that. So, we have not seen many water bodies across here, but still this has been a settlement for a long time. People may ask me why. So, one source of water is Baulis like this, which is a natural source of water. We've got two Baulis here, which is Rajong ki Bauli and Qutub Sahab ki Bauli, which is just a little ahead. Okay? Both of them sources of natural water. The earliest establishments, which were Lalkot, the first Rajput fort, and Kila Rai Pithoda, they had the water source from a couple of lakes inside Sanjayvan. And they are natural sources of water. And this region, if you see, the vegetation is totally thorny here. Okay, this falls in the Aravalli region. So Aravalli mountains start from Rajasthan and they go all the way up to North Canada. Now they are all in bits and pieces because of urbanization. The vegetation there is completely thorny and it's a very rocky surface. So what used to happen is when rainwater used to fall in the rocky surface, it would not get absorbed by soil. It would form streams and trickles and it would go into places. There it would be conserved. So that is why, though this place has some water sources and it is far from Yamuna, it still continues to be a settlement. Delhi had a very rich interconnected water system underground. So they believe from Sanjaywan to Hoskhas village, where you have, there was underground water systems connected. But with the urban population going up, these systems have been devastated, and we face this annual shortage of water every year. In addition to that, I'll tell you, there is one lake here called Hauze Shamsi. The story goes like this. Iltutmish, who was one of the slave sultans, he was a very divine follower of Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Qazi, who was the Sufi saint. And in his dreams, one day he saw the Prophet asking him to dig a place and dig a lake in a place where you find the horse's hoof print. So he saw this dream and he was very in a very different mood because you've seen something out of natural. And he immediately sent a messenger to Qutub Sahab, who was alive during those days. कि मैंने ऐसे देखा है, मुझे सपने में ऐसा बोला गया कि तुम एक तालाब बनवाओ. So Qutub Sahab said, okay, don't come to me, reach that place, I am reaching there. So that lake is still there today, Hauze Shamsi. So if you enter Mehrauli from the Chhatarpur metro station, after you go from Chhatarpur towards Qutub Minar, the side, on the left there's a turn. If you take that turn, on the left side you have that lake. It is still in existence. Again, not in a very clear condition, unfortunately. So this is most of the content of the walk today. I have not told you many stories, but I hope I've been able to cover some of the content that is more relevant to what you want. In addition to that, and I'm telling you, we had because this is a collaboration event, we had a lot of students in this walk today. In our regular heritage walks, which we do for Delhi Carnival, we've got people from all walks of life who are involved in different professions and jobs who come and participate. And trust me, we have a lot of fun. We know each other. Some of us become very good friends, and we share a lot of things. I think this is a good opportunity to socialize, to know each other, and to learn from each other's unique abilities. So I think that is the key thing I think everybody should carry is. Heritage is learning, but at the same time it is like edutainment in a certain way. So this is my humble opinion, and you can refer and you can concentrate within yourself what I say. But I think the experience is what matters. And unless you experience it, you feel it, and you take advantage of it, you're not